I left the house for a few hours, and when I came back, my sister was sitting in my place wearing my robe, and my husband was next to me. They didn't even flinch when I walked in. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning of my hell. My name is Alice, I'm 51, and I thought retirement would be a cozy life, a garden, my favorite novels, quiet evenings with James, my husband of almost 30 years. Our house in the Chicago suburbs was small but cozy, with large windows and a rocking chair where I spent hours with coffee. I was a former literature teacher, and James was a retired plumber with hands of gold and a slightly grumpy but kind heart. We weren't perfect, but I believed in us. Or rather, I did until she came along, and my half-sister Julia came into my life when I was a teenager. We did not grow up together. Her mother was my father's second wife. She was always different, with a beautiful, sassy, with a facial expression that evoked mixtions, admiration, and danger. Julia lived in Florida, had affairs, got into scandals. And now, 30 years later, she suddenly appeared on my doorstep, and the tears, a suitcase, and the phrase, "I have nowhere to go, Alice." Of course, I let her in. I have always been kind. Well, she settled in the guest room. We talked in the kitchen at night. She told me how she had been dumped by another rich man, how she was left penniless. I felt really sorry for her. James treated her with caution, but politely. The first weeks were normal. Julia ironed laundry, baked pies, and laughed out loud. It was as if she had come to life in our home. It made me happy. But then I started noticing little things. James praised the same pies more than he praised mine, and he looked at her longer than a man should. One day, when I came back from the supermarket, I found them in the kitchen. She was standing at the stove in my pink bathrobe. He was sitting at the table telling a joke. When I walked in, no one was embarrassed. She just turned around and said, "Hi, sister. I just made James some of your garlic soup. He loves it." My heart fluttered then, but I didn't say anything. Because this is family. Can't be true. In the following weeks, I noticed James and Julia in the same room more and more often. I was in the yard, they were on the couch. I was in the bathtub, they were in the garage. Sometimes they are even locked in. Laughter, silence, whispering. She started wearing short shorts. Too short for the house where her sister's husband lives. I didn't want to think badly. But every look she gave me, every gesture she made, pierced me like a sewing needle through my skin. One evening I decided to check James's phone number. I know it's low, but something in me was already screaming. There were several deleted messages, but I found a picture, a selfie her, in the bathroom. The towel was barely hanging on. The caption reads, "I forgot to show you this. It wasn't sent to me." I sat down, and everything started spinning. I threw up right into the sink. And then nothing. He denied it. He said it was a joke, that she was just playing a trick, that I had made it up. And Julia laughed. She called me an old lady with suspicions. I kicked her out of the house, but it was too late. Everything had already cracked. No trust, no warmth. A week later, James packed a suitcase. He said he was leaving. I hoped it was temporary. But 2 weeks later I saw them in a shopping center. She was wearing a new coat. His arm was around her waist, and my heart was under Julia's heels. That was just the beginning. What I found out later turned everything upside down. Because Julia didn't just steal my husband, she stole my life, and now she wants me to bless her new marriage. I held the phone with both hands, my fingers trembling. There, in black and white, was the message that broke my heart. I can't wait for the evening, when she falls asleep. It was addressed to my husband, and it was written by my half-sister. After I kicked Julia out, I still held on. I told myself that it was just a mistake, that maybe it was some kind of game. Maybe there was nothing between them, and I had gotten myself all worked up. But everything was burning inside. It was as if the lights in the rooms of my heart were going out. I did not dare for a long time. But one evening I just went to my room and took James's laptop. He always left it open. I just had to know. He had forgotten to log out of his mailbox. And there, among the bank letters, I found what I was looking for. But no amount of preparation could have prepared me for this. I dream about her every night. When she's around, I imagine your skin smells better than her pies. You were made for me, not her. A message from James. To whom? Julia. There were dozens of them. Months of correspondence, intimate, vulgar, ironic, obscenely dismissive. About me as if I were furniture. Like something old, broken, outdated. I didn't scream. I just went out into the yard and sat on the swing. It was dark and cool. Leaves were falling on my knees, and I didn't brush them off. Because what did it matter? I sat there for probably an hour. Then I got up, went back into the house, and, for the first time in my life, I smashed a cup on the floor. Just on purpose. Just to hear something break, but not me. When James came home, I was waiting. With a laptop and printed screenshots. I didn't yell. I spoke calmly, but my eyes were burning. Are those your words? Alice, it's all exaggerated. I was confused. Stop it. See, it was an affair with my sister in my house, on my bed. He didn't say anything. Then he raised his head and said, "You've changed. You've become boring. Julia is alive. She is real." Then I lost control. I hit him. Not hard. Just with the palm of my hand on his cheek. He didn't stop me. He just looked at me like I was a stranger. I screamed. Everything I hadn't said for years. About how I sacrificed. How I silently supported him. How I treated him after his surgeries. How I gave up new dresses to pay his bills. And he traded all this for a cheap drama. He packed his things in 20 minutes. He left in silence. No apology. Goodbye. Just a click of the door. And an empty house. I was left alone, with a betrayal and with this trembling in my hands that wouldn't go away for days. The next morning, Julia called. "Hi, sister. You probably already know." "Oh, what?" "That you're like a spider in my life and you're sucking out all the good stuff." She laughed, her voice calm, as if she'd won the lottery. "He needs me, Alice. You're old. Your time has passed. Don't hold a grudge. Just bless." I hung up the phone. And I cried, like I'd never cried before. In the days that followed, I forced myself to get out of bed. I forced myself to eat. I forced myself to drink water. I stopped making coffee for two. I stopped rearranging the plates. I learned to breathe again alone. My neighbor, Mrs. Carter, brought me an apple pie. She hugged me silently, and I saw them walking away holding hands. I didn't know how to tell you. News of their affair spread quickly in the neighborhood. The pensioners who drank coffee at the Golden Spoon Cafe every afternoon were whispering. I knew it, but I didn't care anymore. I had experienced my first betrayal, the kind that doesn't hurt the body but the soul, the one that steals not things but a part of a person. And then a new message appeared, from James, just one sentence-y. "We need to talk. It's not quite what you think. What is this remorse? Manipulation? Or maybe another one of Julia's games?" I thought I had survived the worst. But then I didn't know that the real fall was ahead. Because when betrayal comes not only from home, but also from the law, the system, and those you trusted, it's a different war. A war for justice. I didn't respond to James' message right away. I wanted to. I wanted to pour out everything: pain, anger, resentment. But I held back, and it was the right thing to do. Because when the emotions subsided, I began to see more clearly, not only his guilt, but also my loss of time, money, and dignity. And then, for the first time, I thought, what if I can make them answer? For everything. Not just morally, but legally and financially. And publicly. Marta, I turned to a lawyer I knew. Marta, a widow of 65, smart, sarcastic, like old smoke, and with eyes that have seen more than the Vietnam War. So he's sleeping with your half-sister, and you still have doubts about whether to fight. Girl, kill him, but through the courts. Marta started digging, and what she found surpassed my wildest guesses. It turned out that James had long been involved in financial fraud. Our house was not registered in my name, as I thought, but in the name of a company he had founded without my knowledge. And 6 months before the affair, he transferred part of our joint savings to Julia's account. A gift, investment, theft. I was shaking. I had lost not only my husband, I had lost the roof over my head. When I woke up the next morning, Marta was standing there with coffee and said, "It's time to play hardball." We filed a formal complaint about the fraud and about the division of property. How nice I sent copies to James and Julia. By mail. With a signature. With the wording, "You have 30 days to respond, otherwise the case goes to court." The response was immediate. Julia called. But she wasn't crying. For those, she was laughing. "Alice, are you crazy? We're blood, this is all. Unnecessary drama." A same blood. Really? Then tell me, how does it feel to betray your own sister? Her voice turned cold. "If you start a war, you'll lose. I have more connections than you think." I hung up the phone, and I started digging deeper. I turned to my old friend Linda, a journalist for a local TV channel. She has always been able to smell the stench in high places, and she helped me. It turned out that Julia had more than one career in the past. There was a story with a college professor, and there was an insurance scam somewhere. Everything was stalled because she knew how to play. I wrote an open letter, not as a victim, but as a woman who had been robbed morally and financially. The letter was published in a blog for pensioners. The video on how not to lose everything after 60 received hundreds of thousands of views. People started writing. They supported me. They shared their pain. Suddenly, I was no longer just Alice. I became the voice of a generation that had been forgotten. A week later, I received a new letter. This time it was official. From James's lawyer. The offer a settlement. No trial. I will receive half of the property, a certain amount of money, silence. And most importantly, I have to withdraw the lawsuit. I laughed. They're scared, Marta said, but it's not over yet. One evening Julia appeared on the doorstep. She didn't look as confident as she had on the phone. "I have nowhere to go," she said. "He dumped me." "Come in," I said. But don't relax. This isn't a movie. This is my life." We sat in the kitchen, I and she, and there was silence between us. She looked me in the eye and said, "Everything you know is just the tip of the iceberg. And if you really want justice, you have to dig deeper, because James is not who he says he is." What did she mean by that? Was she lying or telling the truth? And why does she want to be honest, now that she's been kicked out? When you think you already know everything, a new truth appears, so dirty, so putrid that it makes even those stronger than you sick. But what if this truth is about your own life? She was sitting across from me. My half-sister, Julia. Once my closest friend, now the personification of everything that went wrong. Her eyes were red, her face tired. But her voice was still full of arrogance. "You don't know the half it, Alice. What you think of as betrayal is only the first layer. James has been playing this game for a long time. With both of us." "Both of us," I repeated. She looked away, sucked in a breath of air as if she were about to dive. He manipulated me. Just like he did with you, money. Promised me a life I never had. He said we both deserved more than just being a shadow in your perfect house. I felt like I had fallen into boiling water. I was silent. And every word she said tore at my insides. Julia continued, "It all started before your wedding. He said you were too much for him, that you were strong, that you controlled everything, and he wanted someone lighter with him." And that was you?" I hissed. I was stupid at the time. I wanted something, love, money, attention. I didn't know that we were all just pawns in this game. Julia took out an old phone. She put it in front of me. "It has everything. Photos, messages, bank transfers. James hasn't been taking money out of your account for a long time. He created a scheme that involved me. We got fake married in Las Vegas, behind your back, to register the company in my name, not yours." The world began to spin. The chairs, the kitchen, the lights, everything was jumbled. "Is this some kind of cheap soap opera?" I whispered. "No, Alice. This is your life, and he stole it. I picked up my phone. I checked one of the bank screenshots. The date, the transfer. The name is mine, but the account is fake. And dozens more like it. I realized that James wasn't just setting me up. He had built an empire on fraud, and we were all just masks for his scams. The next morning I brought the phone to Marta. She twirled it around in her hands like a revolver. I see we've reached a new level. This is not just adultery anymore. It's a crime. And a serious one at that. Marta called an old friend of hers, a former financial crime agent, who we agreed to meet at a coffee shop away from the office, where the cameras were off. Carl, a balding man with bags under his eyes, immediately realized that something was serious. If this is true, he said, looking at the documents on his phone, your husband is much more dangerous than you think. There's forgery, money laundering, and the use of straw men. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not James at all. What do you mean not James? I was surprised. In this database. He tapped the tablet. There is no James Nolanborn in that year in that city. So, your husband doesn't exist. At least not officially. I was hit with an icy wind. Julia knew. But she didn't understand everything either. We were all players in someone's chess game. And now I had to understand who was sitting across from me. Though I looked at Carl, at Marta, at my half-sister who was silently drinking coffee next to me. I had no illusions. Now I wanted not just justice. I wanted to expose them. To punish. We're going to dig, I said, to the very bottom. And then Julia whispered, what if it's not James at the bottom? What if it's someone, even more dangerous? You think you've seen the worst, don't you? But reality will always find something else to hit you with. Especially when you have nothing left to defend yourself with. That night I did not sleep. For the first time in a long time, neither melatonin, nor an old warm blanket, nor even silence helped me. My head was buzzing like an old transformer about to explode. James was a fraud. Julia was his toy. And my life was a fiction. I looked up at the ceiling and wondered how much strength I had left in me. And then I remembered my mom's words. A real woman breaks down quietly. But then she gets up so strongly that the world is afraid to touch her. Early in the morning, before 6 o'clock, the phone rang. It was Marta. Alice, listen carefully. We've just received the surveillance footage. There's a suspicious Jeep circling your house. The same one, 3 nights in a row. I got out of bed as if I'd been scalded. What should I go home? Don't come to my place. Stay here until we find out what it is. I threw things into my bag like crazy. Old photos, a laptop, some cash from a jar in the kitchen, nothing, but it was all I had. When I closed the door behind me, it seemed to me that I wasn't leaving behind my home, but my own illusion of security. Marta's apartment was small, but it smelled like life. Coffee, cat hair, a little old wine in the air. She met me in a bathrobe, but with a look that had only one messaging. He's watching, Alice, she said, and I'm afraid he's not alone. Carl brought back some new data. All the companies James was registered to weren't his ultimate owners. They were owned by a Nevada company, which is an old financial trick. Shady players often work through this structure. From drug dealers to politicians. So what now? I asked. Is it the mafia? Carl shrugged. We don't know yet. But we know for sure they want to silence you. In the evening, I went to take out the trash. In a dark alleyway, there was an envelope. And it was unsigned. Inside were photos of me, Julia, and Marta. One for each of us. On the back is a black cross and a noting. If you don't close your mouth, they will close your eyes. I was shaking. I went to Marta and just showed her the envelope. It's not James, she whispered. It's someone higher up. And it looks like we're getting too close. The next morning, a number with a coded name rang. I picked up the phone. The man's voice was cold and even. Miss Nolan, forget everything you've learned. You are not ready to live with the truth, and you won't be able to die with it in a beautiful way. I hung up the phone and looked out the window. Cars, passers-by, shop windows, the world was living its own life, and I stood in the middle of it as if transparent. If I disappeared now, no one would even notice. And that's what gave me strength. No, I won't be silent. And I won't run away. Martha remembered a journalist she knew, Phil, who used to expose major scandals in Washington. He lived alone, reclusive, but had the heart of a true hunter. We met him in a bar called the Owl's Nest. He listened to everything in silence. Then he poured me a bourbon and said, "If you are really ready to go all the way, there is no turning back. It will either destroy you or make you a legend. You have to choose." I looked into his eyes. Deep, old, tired. "I've already made my choice, Phil. The only question is who will play the last move." I raised her like a sister. She became a snake. But I didn't know how venomous her last attack would be. Julia came alone, without warning, without a phone call. She just showed up at Martha's door, with a red mouth, black glasses, and that arrogant look that once drove my stepfather crazy and now burned me to the bone. We need to talk," she whispered, as if we were still sisters. "I'll do it alone." Martha was against it, but I knew I couldn't avoid Julia any longer. This had to be the last dialogue, or a sentence. We were sitting in an abandoned park, a place from my childhood that had once been our refuge. Now it seemed that everything around us had frozen, as the earth itself waited to see how this conversation would end. "You knew he was my husband," I began. "More than once. Not by accident. Not out of fear. Did you know that he never loved you?" Julia sat down across from me, putting her foot up. "He always laughed at your naivety. I just showed him what a real woman is." My heart was pounding like a dull drum. But I didn't look away. "I didn't just sleep with him, Alice," she continued. "I did everything I could to make him lose all respect for you. I destroyed you in his eyes." "Why?" I barely whispered, "Because you were always the best. Then at school, in the eyes of your parents, even in children's Halloween costumes. I'm tired of being a shadow." It was my turn to shine. When I stood up to leave, she grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "You have no right to ruin my life, Alice. If you don't disappear, I will make sure you don't exist anymore. And don't think that's a threat. It's a promise." I ran out of the park like I was in a trap. Then I was breathing in short bursts, as if after a marathon. One thought was pulsating in my head: she had crossed the line. This is no longer just envy. This is war. Marta met me with concern. But when I told her about everything I had heard, her face changed. "She is ready for anything. We have to be the first to act." While Martha and I were making a plan, Carl arrived with news Julia hired someone to break into my old apartment. The laptop was gone, and there were letters, photos, correspondence with a lawyer that could have been evidence in court. "She wants to destroy you documentarily," Carl said. "Leave you without words, without support, without memory." That night I screamed, not just loudly, but sincerely. I broke a cup, then another. I cried like a child. Bitterly, defenselessly, because something important broken in me, the belief that blood binds. But the universe sometimes throws keys from places you don't look for. Carr pulled out a recording from his phone. A random one. An old one. A conversation between Julia and James that he had overheard at one of the parties. She had clearly said, "If she finds out, you will do everything I say. Otherwise, I will show your affairs with Elliot. You know who I mean." This name Elliot was familiar to Phil, the journalist. And now that we had a connection between James and a high-ranking official, we could finally lift the veil. But while we were preparing, Julia took the last step, and I was called to the police. An anonymous tip-off, I was allegedly stealing funds from a charity. "She wants to destroy you legally," Carl said. "And you either start a counterattack now or wake up in a jail cell tomorrow." I stood in the middle of the room, burned but alive, and I realized that the most important battle was ahead. If I break now, she will win. But I still have what she never had, my conscience, and that is why I will win. Sometimes you have to lose everything to start seeing. because only at the bottom do we meet our true selves. The next morning, I went to a place I hadn't been in a long time, a small church on a hill where my mother and I used to come on Easter when our naive dreams were still alive. I didn't come to pray. I just wanted silence. There I sat down on a bench and pulled out of my pocket an old diary that Marta had handed me that night. It turned out that it was my late mother's personal diary. She kept it in an old box of embroidery that I took after her death, but never opened it completely. The pages were yellow, the writing was small and uneven, but every word hit me in the heart. Julia was not to blame for what she became. She saw her father hit me. She saw me choose silence over defense. She has learned to live by swallowing her anger, and I am afraid that one day she will explode. Those lines broke something in me. I suddenly stopped seeing Julia as an enemy. I saw her as a girl who was not protected by anyone, and who chose to survive as best she could. I left the church a different person, if for a moment it seemed that even the air was lighter. At home, I pulled out a box of photos. There was an old one of Julia and me, still children, in the kitchen, covered in flour. I was holding a pie, she was holding a spoonful of jam. We were laughing. We really did. We hadn't betrayed each other yet. And it was at that moment that my old landline phone rang, the one that had been silent for years, so I picked it up. "Alice, it's Mrs. Hanley. Your fourth-grade teacher, and I saw you on the news. And I have to say, I believe you." Her voice made me remember school nights, my first defeats, and the strength that others always saw in me, even when I forgot about it. The day after she called, two more called, an old neighbor from Boston and a former librarian. They wrote letters to the newspaper, on social media, and created a small support group. It was like a breath of fresh air. I was not alone. That night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. I just looked in the mirror, and I said, "You trusted the wrong people. You forgot who you are. You let them break you. But now it's enough. Now it's your turn, in a knot, to take revenge, to live." In the morning I found a small box by the door. It was unsigned. Inside was a flash drive and a note. "Look, only one copy. And only for you. Ella." On the flash drive is a video from the surveillance cameras in James's office. It shows Julia. She's arguing with someone on the phoning. If Alice opens her mouth again, we'll leak the story to the charity. Even if it's a lie, the noise will destroy her. And then another phrasing, she was stupid. She believed that sisters are forever. This video was my chance. I gave it to the lawyer. Now we had real proof of the conspiracy. But not an assumption, a fact. But even more importantly, I felt that I was no longer afraid, because I had already experienced the worst thing, the betrayal of those I loved. On the same day, I went to my mother, to her grave. There I found Julia. She was standing with her head bowed. She was holding the same photo of pies in her hands. "I come here every month," she said, "because it's the only place where I can still be myself." "And who do you see yourself as?" I asked. She was silent. And then she answered, "A woman who doesn't know how to love, and who has been ashamed of it all her life." I did not forgive Julia. I didn't hug her. But I finally saw her not as an enemy, but as a person who lost herself in the pursuit of someone else's life. And it was at that moment that I realized that my life was not over yet. No, it was just beginning. What if the last "I forgive you" is not a release, but a sentence? And what if sometimes not forgiving is the only thing that keeps you sane? I was sitting in the same coffee shop where James proposed to me, where Julia first said, "I envy you." I was different now. Not broken, not soft, just real, with a video in my hand, with a silence that weighed more than a scream. There was a document on the table in front of me. The lawyer had handed it over in the morning, a divorce agreement. Everything I could take back if I wanted to. I had options. I could sue, break everything publicly, make a wave. Or I could forgive, to leave in silence, to take the remnants of my dignity and disappear from other people's dirt. But why should I be the one to leave? She appeared without warning. She stood on my doorstep like a ghost from the past. "May I? Noah, if you've come to apologize, let's save time," I said, leaning on the door. "No, I came because I'm afraid." Her voice was not her usual voice. It was trembling. She sat down on the couch like a stranger in her own home. "I didn't want," she spoke. "I didn't want to steal your life, Alice. I just wanted to have one. Mine didn't exist. And James was a challenge. Like a trophy. But I didn't win, and he was empty." Her eyes were empty. "Oh, and I thought breaking you would make me stronger. But it didn't. I became even more lonely. I listened and felt a strange thing, pity. Not for my sister. Oh, I felt sorry for myself, the knave, the kind one who had allowed herself to be manipulated for years in the name of family." "And what do you want now?" I asked. "Oh, Willa, because if you don't, I will never believe that I have the right to happiness." It was a war inside. Anger, disappointment, pain, everything screamed. No. Allura, but somewhere deep down, something else was saying, forgiveness is not a gift to another. It is freedom for yourself. I was silent for about 5 minutes. I gave you a blessing," I finally said. "But I can give you something else. I will not destroy you, won't stoop to your level, but I won't forgive you, not now. She's gone. No tantrums, no scenes. She just left. And I stayed. I sat in the dark, looked at the documents, and did not sign them. Not yet. Because my choice is not about breaking up or forgiveness. My choice is to be free, and to give myself time. Not for them, but for myself." But that night I received another call. "Alice, it's Ray. The same Ray you used to teach in your computer course." "Ray, is that you?" "Yes. I've started a foundation to support women who have experienced psychological abuse. We were looking for a new ambassador, and I immediately thought of you. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Julia. I don't know if I'll ever put an end to my marriage. But I know one thing, my life is mine. And now, finally, I am writing it myself. When it seems that life has finally collapsed, that's when it quietly opens another door. But do you have the courage to open them?" A few days had passed since the conversation with Julia. I didn't know if I felt better, but I knew for sure that I was no longer a victim. It was at this time that Ray called again. "We're having a meeting with a group of women who have lost everything," he said, "and we want you to be the first to speak." I was surprised. What could I say? I don't even know where I'm going yet, but something in Ray's voice gave me strength, maybe because he never asked. He only offered. The room was small. Plastic chairs, fluorescent lights, the aroma of unfinished coffee. Faces in front of me. Tired, strong, barely smiling. I stepped out. My voice was trembling. But I didn't read a speech. I spoke as it was in my heart. My sister betrayed me. My husband left me. I was left without a home, without support, without faith in myself. But do you know what is worse? To be silent, and to convince yourself that everything is still fine. There was no applause after my words. There was silence, but not dead silence, but full of strength. And one woman came up to Meg. "You said out loud what I was afraid to think. Thank you." These 2 words became everything to me. Proof that even pain can have meaning. After the performance, we were left alone. Alice, I was broken too. My wife left me with 2 children. I thought my life was over. And then, I just started listening to other people, and in that I found myself. "Are you happy now?" I asked. "I'm living. And for the first time, I'm not waiting for something to go wrong. This is already happiness." I returned home, to the same house where I used to spend my nights crying. But now it was different. There was a letter in the mail. A new program to support women of 50 plus has been approved. Your candidacy has been recommended as one of the key leaders. I read it several times. It was real. And, of course, as soon as the light came back into my life, James came back. I made a mistake, a huge one, Julia. She's not who I saw her as. "Who did you see me as?" I asked. He looked down. You were the background, stability. I thought she was fire, but she turned out to be smoke. And you? "I'm not a backdrop anymore, James. I'm not the stage. I'm the director." Can I have one more chance?" he said quietly. I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to give it my all." And then I didn't know what to say, because there was no more anger in me. But there was no love either. There was only life. Mine. Without him. And then she came. No lipstick, expensive clothes, no arrogance. Just a sister. "I'm pregnant," she said, "and I don't know what to do. James is cold, and I'm broken, just like you were." This was the moment when I could pay back, to destroy. If you want to be a mother, be a mother. But remember, a child is not a chance for a new life. It's a mirror. And if you don't heal yourself, she will see the same thing. I left. And for the first time, I didn't run away, I went forward. I don't know how it will end, but I know that something has changed in me. Not forgiveness, not revenge, but the freedom to be myself, even when everyone expects something else. Is it possible to find peace after a storm? And is it real that peace, when a part of you, is always somewhere near the past? I was invited to a big event, a conference for women who had experienced loss, betrayal, and turning points in their lives. Now I was not just the same Alice who was betrayed by her sister. Now I was a woman who stood up. I stood in front of the microphone. My hands were shaking, although it was not my first speech. But this time it was different, because here I had to tell the truth without filth, without heels. I came to you not as an example, but as a proof that even after the deepest fall you can not get up. No, you can learn to breathe underwater and to swim. That I saw myself in the eyes of these people, not the perfect one from the advertisements, the real me. Tired, exhausted, but alive. The tears were not hidden, because it was not about pity. It was about the truth. I told everything, about my sister, my husband, about lonely nights in a hotel for the poor, about the moments when I just wanted to not exist. And then I said, the hardest thing was not to forgive, and not to take revenge, and not to turn into them. After the event, the organizer found me. "We have a national support program. We want you to become its face. We offer a completely new stage, a new life." I was silent. Because how can you refuse when your strength is finally recognized? But at the same time, wouldn't it be an escape? "This is your moment, Alice," Ray said as we drank coffee after the event. "But is it my way?" I asked. It is if you don't go there to escape from someone, but to return to yourself." There were no more hints of romance between us, but there was respect, and something else, something that doesn't need words. Before I left, I met Julia again. She was gray, not angry, not strong, just confused. She didn't apologize. I didn't either. "I'm having this baby alone," she said, "without James. He's disappeared again." I wasn't surprised. I just nodded, and adding, "I wish you strength, not for yourself, but for the child, not in him, not in the past." I was looking for them in myself, and for the first time I found them. I was standing by the bridge where I often walked with James. He once said, "This is where it all began," and I thought, "And here it will end." But then I realized that it doesn't. Nothing ends here, because I am living. And life is not a novel where everything has an ending. It is a series. Sometimes it's long, it's funny, sometimes it's tragic. But it is always mine. I agreed to a new program, to move, to change, not to escape. But for a step forward. I packed my things not like a woman who is running away, but as one who is finally letting go James. On the doorstep. Tired. I sold everything. My share in the business. My apartment. I took pay you back. I took the envelope. I just looked at it. "James, I don't want your money. I need you to finally realize that I'm not your chance at redemption. I'm not a second chance at all. I am my own path." And I shut the door, without screaming. No tears. No regrets. I got on the bus. Not an airplane, not an expensive transfer. Just a regular bus. I looked out the window. The trees were floating by like old thoughts. And for the first time I was not afraid, because no matter what was ahead, I was not the same person. I know that many of you are sitting in front of the screen right now and thinking, what happened next? And I honestly don't know. Because life doesn't give you final chords like in movies. It leaves space for new decisions, for mistakes, and for victories. And maybe one day I will open these pages again, but not as a victim, and not as a heroine, but simply as a woman who survived and learned to live. Hey, if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, because there will be more to come. More truth, more strength, and more life. Thank you for being with us until the very end.